Welcome to MetalCast, the podcast where we're turning up the heat on all things metal, roofing. On this show, we'll explore the world of metal roofing from its durability to design, expert insights, and more. Join us as we bang out the details on the toughest roofs in the game. Get ready to unleash the power of metal roofing.
Hello, and welcome to MetalCast from Metal Coffee Shop. My name is Heidi Ellsworth, and today we're here to talk about one of the things that is so important, metal over metal retrofit roofing. And we're going to talk about what are some other options and why is the growth of metal over metal retrofit really taking the lead. So we have the experts from Roof Hugger here today to talk about this topic. DJ, Dale, welcome to MetalCast.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
I love it. Well, let's start out with introductions. DJ, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Roof Hugger?
Sure. DJ Highnote, been with Roof Hugger going on 14 years. I am a certified, state certified general contractor in Florida, design build contractor. So the cool thing for me is I was building buildings, doing retrofits, using roof huggers, and learning about this alternate way of doing retrofits because I was tearing them off also, which I would never do again. So, my history, my father was in the metal building industry. He was a district manager for Farco. My grandfather was in the metal building industry. He was a contractor. My dad became a contractor. I worked for my dad. You see where this is going, right?
Yeah, I love it.
And Roof Hugger is kind of a family. Dale worked with my grandfather, with my father. He saw me when I was a wee little feller.
Yes, you were.
And so it was great. Dale called and says, "Hey, listen, are you interested?" And I says, "Let's go do this." And it's been a lot of fun to watch the company go from where it was to where we are now and looking into the future of where we're going.
That is so cool. That's so cool. Dale, can you introduce yourself?
You bet. I'm Dale Nelson. I'm one of the founding partners of Roof Hugger. And as DJ said, his grandfather and I go back a long way. He actually gave me my first job in the 70s. When I moved to Florida from the Chicago area. And we stayed friends and partners my entire career in Florida since I was 22 or something like that. So had a great long-time friendship. And sometime in the late 80s, we needed to re-roof one of Red's investment properties. And we came up with hat channels to do it. He got upset telling me that wasn't the structurally correct way to do it. And I said, "Well, that's the way we always do it." And he goes, "Well, you're not doing my building that way." I said, "Oh, okay, I give up. How do we do it?" And he goes, "I don't know." Talk to our engineer. So I went to the engineer and he said, "Well, you got to put hat over hat. It's the only way to do it. Make it structurally correct. You just can't lay the hats across the top of the old roof." He says, "But if you do that, you might get a year or two out of it before it starts leaking horribly." I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, hat channels don't move. They're very rigid. And so you're going to tear the roof panel as it expands and contracts, and it'll leak like a sieve. And, you might get 2 years out of it, maybe." I said, "Oh, my God." So I go back to tell that to Red, and he goes, "Well, give me a week or so. Let me think about this." So he came up with the idea for the Notch Z. We had some made, put them on his roof, and they worked beautifully. Couldn't believe it. So, based on that, we got back together and decided to start a business. It was going to be a 50-50 deal. He was going to try to get a patent, and I was going to do all the work. And I said, "Well, that's fair enough. Let's do that." And that's how we kicked this thing off. And that was in 1991. So what is that, 35 years about now? Yeah, it would be right about now, about January. So quite a long history, and we have been growing and growing ever since. And as you've noticed, we have picked up some competitors along the way, some brand X, Ys, and Zs. So,
Nah.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. But you know what? You have always been the forward thinking, right? So you're always leading the industry on bringing the performance, the testing, the strength. I want to talk a little bit, and DJ, I'm going to have you kind of start us out with a high level overview of really metal over metal retrofits and TPO. How's it all working together in the industry right now? We know TPO is highly popular. We also know metal retrofits. How does it all fit together? Give me kind of explanation.
Well, they're two different products completely. Number one, you can't, it would be like buying a car. One is going to be completely different from another brand. TPOs have their place, but you have to be careful what you're installing them on and what you're considering what they're installing them on. So, and I know that's a bit confusing. However, when they install a TPO on a metal building, they're considering that roof panel a deck, and it's not a structural deck. So that's a major problem. And here again, when you're doing a metal over metal retrofit, you're getting an actual structural attachment to the structure underneath the panels. You're not depending on the panels.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing you got to look at is cost. Well, the cost of a TPO is going to be monetarily a touch cheaper than probably a metal over metal. But then you have to look at lifespan. The new Galvalume finishes 60 years, probably get, 50-year warranties. Your typical TPO is going to be maybe 15 to 20. So it truly is two different products. What a TPO is not going to allow you, these built-up systems, is to add any additional strength to the structure. Snow loads, it's not going to it's not going to actually look into how they can reinforce for snow, such as a metal over metal can. So that's kind of a quick touch, Dale.
Well, I have a tendency to get really deep in the weeds on this stuff, so I'm going to try not to do that too bad. But if you look at metal building design in general, what you're going to see is high strength, lightweight members. Purlins are very high strength, 50 KSI or 55 KSI, spanning 25 feet between members typically, with a structural roof panel on top of that. So we have very lightweight, high-strength members that are allowed to flex or to deflect. So, a metal building may have 3/4 to an inch of deflection in the middle of the bay between frames. That's very acceptable on a metal roof because the ribs of the new roof panel channel the water off the roof directly. It just comes zooming down these channels. When you put a flat roof material or a TPO material over those metal panels and you fill the flutes with insulation, so it's just flat as it can be, the weight in the middle of the bay causes them to deflect that little bit, which causes the water to sheet flow toward the center of the bay. Metal buildings are not designed for that kind of loading. It's particularly important when you have snow loads or something like that, and it really does funnel. And the more weight you get in the center, the more it deflects. The more it deflects, the more goes to the center, and you risk structural collapse at some point. And we have seen some of those types of failures. So sheet flow is never how metal buildings are designed. They're designed for channeled flow. get the water off the roof as quickly as possible, get it to the gutter, get it off the eave somehow. You don't stack water on a metal roof ever. Many times you'll see TPO systems where they have parapets or something. They'll have a valley gutter there, and they'll fill it with foam, take the TPO up the side, and then cut scuppers in like they would do on a conventional roof, which works fine on a conventional roof because you have 20 to 22 gauge structural decking over bar joist. We're talking lightweight, high-strength purlins, never designed for that kind of loading. So you put a parapet up there, you stack water against that while it gets to the scuppers, and that water backs up on the roof. Metal building cannot tolerate water stacking on the roof, and it will bring it down, and we have examples of that specific thing happening. So
that was actually what I was going to just ask. I'm sure there are examples of that happening.
It's very interesting because I'll ask people, what are the ribs on a metal roof for? And of course, all they think about is, well, strength. And that's exactly, that is a part of it, but that channeling that water in one direction. And what's very interesting is I've seen pictures of, these TPOs that have been put over these metal roofs, and you can literally see the water line, spreading out instead of going down.
Another thing, I believe TPO can be made to work in terms of uplift if they attach it in a structurally correct way. And I've studied their testing, and it's not real pretty because the TPO balloons up, kind of like this between supports, but it stays on. So I get that. But in snow country, when the existing building doesn't meet the current code because the roof panels deflect too much, and you put a piece of 40 or 60 mil plastic on it, how does that meet the code? I don't get it. It's just plastic. So it's not adding anything to the structure. It's not enhancing anything. So how they get around that, I'm not convinced. They don't simply ignore that and say, oh, it's fine, don't worry, be happy. But again, we have that deflection issue. The more things deflect, the more the snow accumulates, the more the weight accumulates, and the greater the risk. So,
yeah. And I mean, I want to talk just a little bit about lifespan and when you, from everything you're saying right now and what you're talking about, there's going to be a lot of stress on that TPO to movement and crack. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to crack or break, but those things kind of happen. So DJ, talk to us a little bit about that, about just that lifespan of how the TPO system works on a metal system, that they're kind of have two totally different ways of functioning on the roof.
Well, for sure. And unfortunately, some just completely fail, as Dale said. But I think if you just look at the difference in the material between a metal panel and plastic, you're going to see a difference in lifespan. And once you start seeing a difference in lifespan, when that TPO goes bad, and then you start talking about sustainability, it's even worse, right? So I touched on it a little bit earlier. I think an honest, and Dale, you might have no better, but probably 15 years maybe on a TPO, and it's going to vary.
Yeah, I think it depends where you are in the country. The less, the southern latitudes where the UV is more intense, it's going to get a little less life, 15, 18 years maybe. Northern latitudes, it may go 20, 25. So, it's UV sensitive. Metal is not.
And with the new coatings out there, that, what is it? The Coast,
Coastal Loom, U.S. Steel's new product.
I mean, I don't think you can compare lifespan wise, and then economically, if you start thinking about the cost of how many of these roofs you're going to put on to equal this roof.
And the other aspect of this is that I think more and more we're going to see photovoltaic systems being added to buildings. And typically the commercial building or industrial building we deal with is a lot of square footage of roof area, tremendously applicable for photovoltaics. Oh my gosh, you got all this empty square footage, but you put a TPO roof on it, you have to puncture that membrane and get some kind of bracket down into the structure, and then flash every one of those little openings you just created, and then mount the panels, and then the TPO is going to run out of a useful life before the photovoltaic panels. So then you have to take the panels off, replace the roof, and put it all back again. That metal roof is going to last twice as long as the photovoltaic panels that have a 25 to 35-year life. And they mount externally with brackets that don't even penetrate the roof panel. So it's an ideal scenario. And even if you don't want to put those photovoltaics on today for whatever reason, you can do it 10 years from now, and that roof is still going to outlast the photovoltaics.
And it would be designed to carry that load.
And exactly right. We can carry the load.
And that's one of the things I kind of wanted to circle back to a little bit. And just as we're talking about this is, as contractors are talking to their building owners, really laying out that this, a metal over metal roof with Roof Hugger is going to not only re-roof it, but it's going to stabilize the strengthening of the purlins and the structure of the building overall. And knowing that some buildings need that, and I'm sure a lot of purlins need that. You can't do that with other types of recovers.
No, you cannot. No. And in the overall scheme of things, metal is going to have the lowest lifetime cost because it's going to be, heck, the finish is warranted for 50 years. The roof is going to go 70 plus or minus. We originally had 10-year warranties on our roof panels on the buildings for retrofitting, and they're already 35 and 40 years old. So you got to know they're going to go 70 years. And, the TPO is about, quick numbers, maybe 80% of a metal retrofit. So for an extra 20%, you double the life. And that's a pretty good deal. So it really does have the lowest cost overall when you are realistic about and analyzing these things.
And let's talk a little bit about safety, DJ. Just going, the safety between the systems. And I'm thinking safety, obviously, in the install, but I'm thinking long-term safety, like when they come back to put on those if they're going to come back and put on PV, if they're doing maintenance and different things. I mean, just the strength of a metal over metal creates such a much more safe working environment.
Well, I think what we're finding nowadays recently is everybody is worried about the structure, right? They're worried about weight. What can we do to make the structure itself stronger? The purlins, as Dale said, are deflecting. And one thing, and it's not just TPOs, we get into a lot of these coatings that they'll spray on. All of these other type of systems, it all comes down to a money deal. So we see these coatings go on, and what they're doing is just spraying them right over rusted areas, right over screws, and it allows for air to get under there. It traps this moisture. It makes the roof literally corrode quicker. And I know I've been on these roofs where they're coated, and you take a step and you start hearing that, you're like this, and you take the biggest step you can backwards, right? That's the beauty of the metal over metal, right? We're not covering up anything that's shouldn't be already addressed anyway. And again, you're getting a product that's bringing the structure, the whole entire building up to meet the codes. And we're going to meet snow loads. We're going to meet the wind uplifts. We're going to add the strength, to these purlins. You're going to be able to put solar. You're going to feel confident that you have a system that is tested. That we have Florida product approvals. You have FMs. This building we can engineer the framing system designed for this building. So I think that's something very important with safety, but not only that, just to know you got a product that is made for your building. A pre-engineered building is exactly what it says. It's engineered for the components that are on it, right? So you start putting a TPO on, you've now added a completely different product. And in my opinion, you have kind of re-engineered that system.
Well, one of the things too is that with different types of recovers instead of the metal, and correct me if I say this wrong, but they can skip purlin lines, right? And cause problems that way too. Dale?
Yeah, the best resource I know of is if you go to the Florida Product Approval website, there are TPO systems listed there. Probably there's 40 or 50 of them actually. And some of them allow spans of 10 feet. Now, metal buildings are typically have purlin space 5 foot on center. Good engineering practice will not allow you to skip any structural member in a building. So simply because it overloads the ones you do attach to. They were never designed for that double loading. So you have to attach to every member. Even if they're 2 foot on center, you got to attach to every one, which gets us once in a while. It's like, I know we can do better, but you can't skip them. That's just good engineering practice. So we don't do that. But some of the systems that you see quoted out there have attachment 10 foot on center, which it's just ridiculous to think that that's going to be a system that has any longevity at all to it. So, yep, it does happen.
I want to just make sure we don't miss this part too, and that is energy efficiency. And with the metal over metal building, we already talked about sustainability and just how that works, but let's just talk a little bit about the benefits when it comes to energy savings.
I think that's one of the key selling points that TPO people like to tout, and that is that they're filling the flutes of the existing roof with insulation, and then they'll run another piece of insulation across the top and then attach to every purlin going up. But any retrofit system we create can do exactly the same thing. So you can fill it with insulation if you choose. You can ventilate that cavity. And in these lower, smaller systems, the difference in insulating and ventilating is minimal.
At best, very little.
At best. Now, the taller systems, of course, and you go to rigid insulation, obviously it gets better as it gets thicker. So it depends on the building, the circumstance, and all that. But there is no energy scenario that we cannot perform equally or better than a TPO system. It's just a matter of how we design it. So no big deal. And we control the height with our computer control punching equipment. So not a big deal.
And I also know you're doing a lot of testing and look at ventilation versus insulation. And Dale or DJ, you just said that, that if you get condensation trapped under there, if you're doing things the wrong way, you're going to have all kinds of problems underneath. So talk just a little bit about that.
Well, what's very interesting is we get the question all the time, do we need to insulate or ventilate? What do we need to do? And, I think it's a kind of a different question depending on where you're at and the country. But I have done some experiments where we built an actual system. We did a 4.5-inch tall and then a 2-inch tall. We insulated the 4.5-inch tall and ventilated the 2-inch, and we were getting just about the same numbers from temperature on top to the bottom. So, ventilation, especially I would say like where we're at in Florida or certain areas, it's going to work great, and you're saving the money in insulation. So I guess I would describe it kind of on a hot day walking, as you're walking down the street, you go underneath the shade tree, that shade, is a temperature difference, and you're allowing that air movement, between. Now, I've done systems up north where they wanted the insulation. So we did a 6-inch tall part. They put an isoboard insulation down, and then we put vent holes in the top of the hugger to allow airflow still.
Gentlemen, this is so interesting. So I am going to really, for everyone out there listening, because this is just so important when you're thinking about the retrofit of a metal building and doing it correctly for a long performance, please visit the Roof Hugger website. I know you have a lot of information on there, and that's the place where you can really, if you want to go deeper, or of course you could just call Dale or DJ and they would be happy to talk to you about this.
We certainly would.
I love it. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. What a great topic. Again, I'm learning so much. I love it. Thank you so much. And we'll have you back again. We've got a lot more to talk about.
Yeah. Thanks, Heidi.
Yep. Take care. Thanks, Heidi.
Thanks. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Please check out the Roof Hugger directory on Metal Coffee Shop and listen to all of our MetalCasts under the RLW navigation. Be sure to subscribe and set those notifications so you don't miss a single episode. We'll be seeing you next time on MetalCast.
Ready to raise the metal roof? Subscribe to MetalCast now and stay tuned for all things metal roofing. Go to metalcoffeeshop.com to learn more. Rock on, and we'll catch you on the next episode.